The Realms of Conquest book series is about the world's only magical kingdom and their quest for peace. Paperback and ebook available on Amazon.com, or check out the free video book on YouTube. That's REALMIC.
I'm Steve Rosenfield, and my book is Mastering Stand-Up, the complete guide to becoming a successful comedian. And here's what it's about. This entertaining and sharply written guide, I didn't write this, by the way, for both beginners breaking into comedy and professionals seeking to improve their sets and advance their careers, examines the work of great comedians such as Jerry Seinfeld, Eddie Izzard, Louis C.K., Moms Mabley, Richard Pryor, Sarah Silverman, and more as a means of illustrating the most important techniques of performing and writing stand-up. And it goes on. I have to confess I feel a little odd saying this myself, but I will. Here, Stephen Rosenfield lays out a clear plan for achieving success, candidly explaining what works, what doesn't, and why, including a 12-item successful comedian's to-do list. Rosenfield states, get undeniably good at each of these, and you can kiss your day job goodbye. You'll be a pro.
That was great. You actually didn't have to read that part, but I'll keep it since you read it.
I wasn't sure how far to go. I don't usually refer to myself in the third person.
Yeah. Right on, right on. Book Lovers Unite! I'm Demethius Jackson, and you're listening to the Chapter 1 podcast. The greatest stories ever written all begin with Chapter 1. In each episode, our guest authors will share their first chapters with you. Hello, everybody! Man, this year has been getting off to a really great start. Over the last few episodes, we've had guests on the show that weren't only authors, but they were driven in helping people in their own rights. And in keeping with that theme, we have another author on the show who I just know you're going to enjoy. Today, I'll be speaking with Stephen Rosenfield. He's the founding director of the American Comedy Institute, and he's taught comedy to just about everyone you can imagine, from major headliners all the way down to the guy who just wants to be a little more funnier. He recently published a book called Mastering Stand-Up, where he teaches people how to have successful stand-up comedy careers. Stephen is a fantastic author. He's a fantastic teacher. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience that he will be sharing with us today. So this episode is going to run extra long, and he even gives us a bonus chapter reading. So stay tuned for that because it all starts right now.
The chapter is called The Road Ahead. Successful comedians get good at 12 things. Get undeniably good at each of these, and you can kiss your day job goodbye. You'll be a pro. Here is the stand-up comedian's to-do list. Number 1, find your originality. Get in touch with what is original about your sense of humor. Originality is a hallmark of exceptional art. In comedy, it's what the entertainment industry looks for first and foremost when determining who has the makings for the big leagues. Most club comics aren't originals. Their work is generic. Their material may get laughs, but it could be performed by anybody, and that's why they're not memorable. And then on the other hand, there are the stars of comedy. They make an indelible impression on us. We feel like we know them. We think of them as friends, as family. We love them. When they finish a set, the buzz in the room is not about jokes. It's about them. I'm going to help make that happen for you. 2, master the techniques of stand-up comedy writing. You may not think of yourself as a writer. You may think of yourself as just a funny person who says funny things. The idea of trying to write comedy may be intimidating, but it shouldn't be for one simple reason. You're already writing comedy. Like many comedy writers, you're writing with your mouth. What you need to do now is capture the funny things you say and think by writing them down. Once you get your spontaneous comic creations on paper, you can start to apply the writing techniques that will transform your ad libs into stage-worthy stand-up comedy material. 3, master the techniques of stand-up comedy performing. Sometimes new comics feel like if they know their lines, they're prepared to do their set. Not true. That would be like an actor saying he doesn't need any rehearsal because he's memorized his lines. A stand-up, like an actor, must have the ability to produce on stage the emotions that give life to his performance. He must be capable of creating this emotional life night after night in a way that seems spontaneous and unrehearsed to the audience. Masterful comedians acquire the techniques to do this, and it's the reason why many of them become exceptional actors. In the upcoming chapters, you'll learn how to acquire these skills. 4, create your comic persona. To become a successful comedian, you must develop a vivid and distinctive on-stage personality. A personality as individual as your real-life personality, only more so. This stage personality, or persona as it's called in comedy, must be manifest in your material, in how you look, what you wear, how you move, and speak. The process of creating a persona is a collaboration between you and your audiences over an extended period of time, usually several years. I'll teach you how to make this collaboration happen successfully. 5, deepen your understanding of comedy. Gifted stand-ups go on to careers as actors, writers, directors, and producers in television, theater, and movies, as hosts of their own television talk shows, and as best-selling authors. Their versatility comes from the knowledge and experience they acquire about comedy during their formative years in stand-up. Getting good at stand-up, writing, and performing is an education that will enable you to pursue comedy in all areas of the arts and entertainment. 6, study great comedians. Watching great comedians will help you learn and improve your act. Just because someone is on stage doing stand-up means that you should study that person and try to incorporate what they're doing into your work. The comedians you love are the comedians you want to study. Louis C.K. said that studying George Carlin taught him what he needed to know to move up in the stand-up ranks from hack to comedy star. Carlin's work taught Louis the 2 things that became Louis's trademark. The first is to have the courage to speak the unspeakable on stage. And the second is that if every year you throw out all your old material and write an hour of new material, you will be forced to dig deeper and deeper into yourself to find your comedy. Don't limit yourself to studying only the current crop of star stand-ups. View video of the great stand-ups of the past. The internet has made this easy. You're not going to know what's possible to accomplish in your stand-up unless you know the work of the great comedians who came before you. 7, perform, perform, perform. To become a pro, performing must be a regular part of your work week. Perform stand-up as frequently as you can. The only way you'll absorb the techniques you learn from this book is to use them on stage over and over and over again until they become second nature to you. 8, never blame your audience. Your audience can be an invaluable guide to improving your writing and performing. In comedy, they're ultimately your editor-in-chief. Over time, they'll teach you what subjects and attitudes work best for you. Just as important, they'll teach you what doesn't work for you. Sometimes they'll be your friends, and sometimes they'll be strangers. Sometimes they'll love you, and sometimes they'll be cold and indifferent. Sometimes they'll be rude. And sometimes you'll wish you could take them home with you because they'll give you more than anyone else in the world gives you. They'll do all of these things some of the time. Remember, however, that all of the time they're your collaborators. In good shows and bad, they have lessons to teach you about how to be a better comedian. Never blame an audience. Learn from them instead. This book will teach you how. 9, know the forms of stand-up comedy. As in all art, stand-up has classical forms. Knowing them will help you define and clarify the type of stand-up you want to do. Knowledge of the forms will expand and give shape to your comic ideas. 10, understand the business. To work as a stand-up, you need to be knowledgeable about the comedy business. There's never been more opportunities for comedians and comedy writers than there are now. Because of the internet, it's possible for you to create and produce at virtually no cost comedy that can launch you professionally. I intend for you not only to be a stand-up, but also to be a paid stand-up. I'll provide you with a working knowledge of the entertainment industry. 11, trust your nerves. It's okay to be nervous. Your nerves can give you invaluable assistance on stage. In this book, you'll learn how to make your nerves work for you. 12, have fun. Stand-up is the one endeavor I know of where having fun is actually a requirement. And it's a requirement for this reason. When individuals become an audience, a transformation takes place. They stop feeling what each of them is feeling individually, and they start to feel collectively what the performer is feeling. If the audience picks up from you that there's nowhere else on earth you'd rather be than on stage talking to them, then they start thinking, I'm having a ball here listening to this guy. If, however, you go on stage thinking, Christ, let me get this over with, then your audience will start thinking, get this over with. Before each of our shows, I ask the comedians, what's the most important thing tonight? The answer is to have fun. Now that you know what you're working toward, we're ready to begin. Remember this moment. The memory will make you smile when you're standing in the wings waiting to go on for your first television special.
I was really excited to speak with you because I've actually never read a book like yours before, which is a good thing, Comedy is such a subjective thing, yet you've written a book that can benefit pretty much anyone who reads it. From the novice comedian just starting out to the seasoned professional wanting to up their game, even to the guy who just wants to seem more witty at social events.
Right.
How did you get into the profession of teaching comedy?
I completely backed into it. My background is in the theater as a director. There was a tremendous comedy boom in the 1980s. It was madness. Literally, it was madness. Mm-hmm. Virtually, I would say 90% of the shows that were on cable television were stand-up shows. And the club scene exploded in New York at that period of time. That was the hottest place to be, was in a comedy club. The clubs were open till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
I've heard about those days, yeah.
During that time, when I was in between productions, I coached actors. And there was a comedian who saw a sketch comedy show that I did in the city and liked it, who got in touch with me and asked me if I would work with him on his stand-up, which I'd never done before. And I said, sure. And when he came to see me, there was like a really interesting big difference between this and working with actors, which is that some of the things that really required improvement was the writing itself. Mm-hmm. It wasn't solely a performing issue. The writing was also important. And so I started writing with him, and it went really, really well. And there's something, one of the things I love about stand-up is the sort of the metric system in stand-up mm-hmm. is as immediate and clear as I think it gets, because either they laugh or they don't laugh. So that was going well, and then more and more stand-ups came to work with me, and I found that I really loved it. So I found myself really gravitating to it, and as I started working with more and more comedians, it kind of came to a point where I thought, I could just do this. I think I would really, really like to do this. And actually, it was that very first student who came up with the idea of, he wanted to put together a workshop so that I would be working with a group of comedians in a class situation. Mm-hmm. So, they could get up and perform and have each other as audience. And I worked with them individually, one-on-one, on their writing. And then I would produce the show in the comedy club. So I got to see them on stage in front of a real audience.
It's interesting that you say that, because your book is written kind of like a seminar or a workshop, in that the reader is taken through the entire process of starting out and building a career. Was that your original idea, or did the book evolve into that current format as you were writing?
I sat down to write this book 27 years into having done this. When I sat down to write it, I knew what I wanted it to be. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed is that I work with comedians at all different levels, not only people who are beginning. I think that a lot of the other books about stand-up are very valuable. I think they are. I've learned a lot from almost every book that I've read. But I feel stand-up is an art form, and it's only very recently that it's spoken about in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is that there's a feeling in this country that if something is really wildly popular, it can't be art. It's the way people thought about jazz. It was like there was something trashy about jazz. It's hard to imagine that, that anybody could think that.
You should see or read some of the comments that were made about ragtime music. I'm talking like Scott Joplin, like Maple Leaf Rag. It was the devil's music. I think anything new or anything that's breaking the conventional form always has that form of resistance.
It does. It absolutely does. And I've actually read studies that say that our brains really don't like change, any change.
Mm-hmm. So a few of my favorite comedians right now are like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, Amy Schumer, Fluffy, and all of them talk about how drastically the industry has changed over the years. For example, how the internet has saturated the industry, but at the same time has leveled the playing field. And also you have a lot of major networks now that are willing to take more chances on up and coming comedians. So from your perspective, how do you think the industry has changed, or where do you see it going?
Okay. The industry has always been changing, and it goes to whatever the new platforms of delivering up entertainment go to. I mean, that's the short answer. Mm-hmm. It started out sort of major starting out in vaudeville. And then when radio was invented, it moved on to radio, and it went from radio to television, and now there's the internet. And that's changing things as well. Those changes could be, disastrous if you were on the business end of things. If you were a vaudeville, if you owned a vaudeville house, those changes meant, the end of you. But comedians just go from one platform to another, and they do it with a lot of ease because technologically they don't need anything. Yeah. I mean, they just need a microphone. That's all. And certainly, I would say that the big change in the approach to stand-up is that it became much more personal. People like Lenny Bruce, well, not people like Lenny Bruce, there are no people like Lenny Bruce, but Lenny Bruce was incredibly influential this way. Moms Mabley was incredibly influential in terms of using stand-up comedy for new purposes.
What are some of the rookie mistakes that people make when they're first starting out in stand-up?
A lot of times I'll hear new comedians say, I've been told just be yourself. Okay, that's a rookie mistake. Right there. It's like, no, you can't be yourself. And you can't be yourself because, you're too complicated. You can know somebody for 10 years and they'll do something that utterly shocks you. And you're like, oh my God, I don't know that person. And in other entertainment forms, if you're watching a play, there's like 2.5 hours to find out who's really who. But a stand-up has to accomplish that in a matter of seconds, not even minutes. The other big things, I would say, are technical things. It's very important that the time between laughs be minimal. And very often new stand-ups will have something funny. They have something funny, but it took them like a minute to get there. That's just taking too much time. And also, I would say another rookie mistake, there's a thing that I call like jokey jokes. And those are jokes where the audience knows what you're saying, has no truth in it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You're just saying it to get a laugh. And sometimes you can get a laugh. You can't get anywhere as terms of your career by doing jokes like this. But you can get laughs from an audience. And I would say that's another very common mistake. It shouldn't be in your set because the audience, they really want to know who you are. And the you I'm talking about is you as a comedian. They want to know about you. That's one of the things that I teach my students is that I tell them, okay, here are the subjects of stand-up comedy. Here we go. Number one, how you feel about your life, how you feel about your past, your present, your future. Number two, how you feel about everything else that concerns and interests you. If you're into politics, how do you feel about politics? If you're into pop culture, how do you feel about pop culture? Okay, end of list. So how can you be original? Where does original, if there are only two subjects? Mm. And the answer is you. Yeah. You're the subject.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends who are just naturally funny. And what I mean is that they're just basically hilarious without even trying. And I used to think that this is something that you had to be born with because, my 1 hour Netflix comedy special would pretty much suck. But do you think that anyone has the potential to be funny or does it take a certain type of personality?
I think the phrase sense of humor is actually completely accurate. I think it's a sense. I think it's like touch, taste, smell, hearing, seeing. I think it's a human sense. I think as human beings, we are born with a sense of humor. And let me say this, it is very rare. It is, I would say, in all of these years that I've worked with people, I would say really a handful of them had no sense of humor. I mean, there's just, it's hopeless. So I think most of us have a sense of humor. Most everybody does. And again, like sight, like sound, some people have it more acutely, than other people do.
What do you think separates a good comic from a great comic?
I'll tell you what it is. In the book, I give the 7 characteristics of a successful persona. And the first 6 have to do with things like originality, genuineness, vividness, you're clear, got a very clear idea of who you are, likability. We laugh hardest with people that we really, really like. And the biggest laugh you get from an audience is when they love you. What number am I on? Let's see, likability. And funny, of course. I say that because it seems like funny should be self-evident, but it's not for a lot of comedians. To be funny is work. But here's the 7th, and not everybody can do this. The 7th is what's your story? Because the people that really go on to become kind of great comedians, they got a very clear story. And their story could be one sentence. I mean, I'm not talking about Anna Karenina here. I'm talking about I get no respect. That was Rodney Dangerfield's story.
Yes.
And his whole, and everything he did was about that. It's what I was saying in that first chapter. Everything from the way he wore his clothing to the way he looked, the way he spoke. He'd come out on stage and he already sweated through his shirt. He hadn't even started yet. And he'd have this haunted look on his face. And, he'd said, I told the cab driver to take me where the action is. He took me home. That's the story. Woody Allen had a story that was remarkable. At the time that he started, virtually all stand-up comedians were married. All the men were married, and the few women who were doing it, like Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers, they married. And comedy tended to be about married people. The comedies on television, the sitcoms, were all married people. It was I Love Lucy and, Life with Riley and Father Knows Best, and it was all family, family, family. Then Woody Allen came along, and he was divorced, which was like unheard of. And he was bitterly divorced. Woody Allen created being single in the city. That was his story. Mm. He was perennially single.
I never realized that before.
And then the sitcoms became about being single. And so the family started disappearing, and we have The Office and Friends and Seinfeld and so on. Mm. So when I say story, I mean that kind of story. Being perennially single in the city is a story. I Get No Respect is a story. Domestic Goddess is a story. Those are the ones who go on to become really great stars.
That's great. That's I've never thought about that before, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. I really only have one other question for you.
Okay.
Somewhere out there right now, a person is listening to this interview who is probably working a 9-to-5, but is seriously considering pursuing a career in comedy. Uh-huh. What is that guy's first step?
Start doing it. Your first step is to do it, and start wherever you are. If you're at school, start at school. The elementary school my son Nate went to had a talent night, and he did stand up when, he was in 4th grade. So start. The important thing is start, get going, and just look around. There'll be places you can perform. You belong to an organization. They're doing a fundraiser. They need someone to MC. Okay, that's you. Go for it. You will eventually move. If you're in a small town, you're not going to really be able to continue to pursue it that way. You're going to need to get yourself into a city where there's just more opportunity for you. But to begin with, start. And here, I'll tell you, let me just be a little bit more specific. A party is a great place to start. Parties are a great place to try all sorts of things out. I know, family get-togethers. Go for it. Prepare something and try it out. Don't tell them that you prepared, but give it a shot.
Introducing to the living room.
Exactly. I'll be here all week.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a blast. Absolutely. And I learned so much just from this brief conversation that we had. I mean, things that not only apply to comedy, but just in general apply to life.
Yeah, a lot of it does. Strangely enough, it's true.
Yeah. Where can readers find you and your book online?
Probably Amazon's the easiest one. But it's, I think it's at Barnes & Noble and all the sort of standard places you'd go and look for books. You can get it there.
And then where can they learn more about the Comedy Institute?
They should Google it. Google the American Comedy Institute, and they can get information about all of our courses and our offerings and our faculty. Internet's a great thing.
Right on. And with that, we're going to wrap up another episode. Wow, what can I say? That was a great conversation. I love when we have authors on and we talk about one subject, but the content of that subject transcends into other areas. It just shows how everything is just all connected. I'm having a geek moment here. I love it. Thanks again to Stephen Rosenfield. I really appreciate him coming on and talking with us today. And keep listening after these closing remarks for his bonus chapter reading. In this chapter reading, he tells you how to deal with the voice in your head. You know, the one that tells you you're not good enough. Yeah, he's got tips for that. If you have any questions or comments about this episode or any, or you know an author who you think would be a good fit for the show, let me know. Connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and now YouTube, or you can email me at info@ch1podcast.com. You can also check out our website at chapter1podcast.com. There you'll find our previous episodes and hopefully find your next favorite author. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, but most importantly, help us spread the word by writing a short review and telling everyone you know about the show. So hopefully you enjoyed these tips about starting a successful stand-up comedy career. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about acting. Well, that's it for me. You all stay awesome. Till next time.
This chapter is called The Voice. If you are thinking negative thoughts about your work, and these thoughts are making you feel anxious, frightened, unworthy of pursuing your dream, inferior to your colleagues and ready to quit, you are suffering from the voice. This is a common occurrence and there's no reason for alarm. I'm going to teach you how to successfully cope with it. It's important that you address this condition early on. Left unchecked, the voice will, at the very least, hobble your career, and at the worst, it could destroy it. But we're not going to let that happen. There's an important distinction to make between the voice and nerves. Nerves are a healthy, helpful response to knowing you're about to perform. We experience nerves as heightened excitement. It's like the feeling some people experience before they get on a roller coaster. Thoughts caused by nerves run like this. Oh my God, I'm really going to do this. I hope I remember my lines. Do I have my cheat sheet? Okay, take a deep breath. Wait a minute. Is Michael here yet? Oh, he's always late. He can't be late to this. Oh, that's my intro. Wake me up when it's over. Nerves feel exciting and fun scary, roller coaster scary. The voice is not fun scary. It's terrifying. The voice doesn't help you the way your nerves do. Its intent is to hurt you. Its intent is to stop you from doing what you feel you've been put on this earth to do. Usually, the more you perform, the less nervous you feel. You stop worrying about knowing your lines. You have experience handling all sorts of audiences, large, small, generous, cold. The intensity of the voice, however, never diminishes unless you know how to silence it. I'm going to teach you how to do that right now. The first step in silencing the voice is to understand what it really is. What makes it dangerous to your career is that it disguises its true identity. It presents itself to you as accurate, highly critical, anxiety-provoking thoughts about your comedy writing and performing and about your relationships with your peers and mentors. When you're in the grip of the voice, you think thoughts like these. I'm not funny. No one's laughing at my jokes. If some people are laughing, it's because they feel sorry for me. The other stand-ups are way funnier than me. I don't belong here. The people telling me I'm funny are lying to me. I'm making a fool of myself. I should quit. That is the voice's disguise. It pretends to be an accurate, fair critic speaking to you about the work you're doing now, but it's not. In reality, it's an old, frightening parental voice from your past. In our childhoods, no one could scare us as much as our parents could. Even the best-intentioned parents on occasion scare the bejesus out of their children. And depending on the degree that parents instill fear, that fear is retained into adulthood. The voice is a voice from the past. It has a very specific mission. Its aim is to make you give up on what you want to do the most and what, in your heart of hearts, you know you can do. It wants you instead to abandon your adult aspirations and move back in with mom and dad, literally, if they are still with us, and figuratively, if they have departed. You will not hear a peep from the voice if you're entertaining a pipe dream, a dream that you know is a complete fantasy that can't possibly come true. For instance, I love basketball. I love to play it. I love to watch it on TV. When I daydream about giving up what I'm doing now and becoming a professional basketball player, I don't have a single anxiety-producing negative thought about it. That's because I know there isn't a snowball's chance in Trump National Golf Club, Mar-a-Lago, that it could actually happen. But I've had personal experience with the voice. It was not connected to performing. It was connected to an important business decision I needed to make. The American Comedy Institute was located in a small office that we'd outgrown because of the increase in our student population and staff. In addition, our landlords announced that the building was about to be torn down. So it was time to move to a new and larger space. I found a perfect place. It was better located for our students and staff. It was large enough for us to stay put and continue to grow. The price was right. I loved it. That's when the voice kicked in. I was walking over to the new space to sign the lease when I was hit by a wave of anxiety. This is what threw my mind. Signing that lease will be a catastrophic mistake. You can't afford the rent. You can't stay in your old office either. You're trapped. You're going out of business. Pathetic. These thoughts frightened me, despite the fact that, one, business was better than ever. That's why I needed to move. Two, the new office space was so large that I could hold classes there as well as have plenty of room for me and the staff. This meant I would no longer have to pay rent on both an office space and a studio space. We would actually save an operating cost. Three, I loved the place, and so did the staff and students whom I asked to check it out before I decided to sign the lease. As a married, middle-aged man with 2 children and a mortgage, the daydream of starting a new career in professional basketball produced in me nary a negative thought. But as a successful producer and teacher of comedy, I was racked with anxiety about moving into a wonderful and economically sensible new location. The picture of me painted by the voice was the portrait of a failure. That is the picture the voice wants you to have of yourself. It is not threatened by your pipe dreams because it knows you will never act on them. It is not threatened by your setbacks because they contribute to that negative picture. The voice is threatened by your success. It's threatened by you moving forward on the path that you know is the right path for you. It fails if you succeed. If you succeed, you won't move back in with your parents. You'll have a place and a life of your own. The more you succeed, the louder the voice becomes. It is a reason that some people on the cusp of success self-sabotage. When you are in its grip, the voice convinces you to believe dreadful thoughts about yourself that others close to you would find utterly absurd. These are the 3 steps to take that will release you from the voice's grip. 1, identify the voice. It's easy to do. If you're thinking negative things about your work that make you feel anxious, afraid, and inferior and make you want to give up, that is the voice. The coupling of negative thoughts and anxiety is the tip-off. Consider this. You possess actual, legitimate, critical faculties that help you improve your work. These faculties guide you in deciding where your material needs editing, what to keep, what to rewrite, what to chuck, where to adjust an attitude. These facilities give you ideas and thoughts that improve your work, not ones that scare you and make you want to give up. When you work to strengthen your act, it makes you feel creative, not afraid. It is the feeling of anxiety that signals the presence of the voice. By identifying the voice, you are identifying the real source of your anxiety. It's not your work. It's not about this show, this audience, this piece of material. It's not about now. The source of your anxiety is a voice from the distant past. This voice is an expert at scaring you. However, it knows absolutely nothing about comedy, which brings us to step 2. Step 2, shut it off. because thankfully the voice is always wrong. I say thankfully because if this weren't the case, if like a stopped clock, it were randomly and occasionally correct, it would be well nigh impossible to differentiate it from the legitimate criticism of your work. Happily, this is not the case. In this world of ours, where every day is filled with uncertainties, one thing you can absolutely count on is that the voice is wrong. I witness this over and over again in my work with performers. An actor will be accomplishing breakthrough work in a rehearsal. I'm directing. Her colleagues and I will be watching her in awe when suddenly she stops and says she can't continue the scene because her work is false, phony, a lie, shit. Or I want to review a video of a stand-up's performance and he begs me not to put it on because he thinks it was a total bomb. I insist, and when his performance appears on screen, there are big laughs from the first joke on. The voice has completely distorted these performers' view of their work. And this makes sense in the light of the voice's mission, to make you give up on what you know you can do and what you want to do more than anything else. The voice is wrong. Don't buy into it. Don't have a beer with it. Don't go for a walk with it. Don't listen to it. What it is saying is worthless. Tell it to shut up and move on. 3, turn the voice's negative message into a positive one because the voice is not simply wrong, it is exactly wrong. The truth is always the exact opposite of what the voice is telling you. So if you want to know your legitimate feelings and thoughts about your work, take the voice's negative message and say it back to yourself positively. Say, for example, that you're in a comedy workshop and you're watching the stand-ups who are performing before you. If you start feeling panicky because you're thinking about how unfunny you are and how if you don't do the sensible thing and split, you will humiliate yourself, that means deep down you are thinking, some of these people are really funny, and so am I. I was nervous about taking this workshop, but I faced my fears, and now I'm here. And I see now that I should be here. I'm finally where I belong. That's what you really think and feel. The voice is a backhanded compliment and a sign of progress. You hear it only when you're succeeding and feeling good about your work. You are entitled to those positive feelings and thoughts. You've earned them. They're yours. Don't let the voice take them away. My experience is that most people in the arts and entertainment will encounter the voice at some point to some degree. It's kind of like catching a cold. It's common. It comes and goes throughout your life. If you take care of it, it can't hurt you. If you don't take care of it, it can turn into something serious. Again, here are 3 steps to take when the voice starts rattling you. 1, identify it. 2, remember it's wrong and shut it off. 3, restate its negative message to yourself in positive terms and embrace your progress and success. Knowing this will transform the voice from a potent, malignant cancer on your career to a little sneeze. God bless you.